Hey, Johnny Alanya here, and once again, I'm bringing on George Mooring today with Arbor Financial. We're going to discuss closing costs. A lot of people are familiar with the down payment and saving for that, but not a lot of people think about closing costs. So I'm gonna bring it on here with George. George, can you explain a little more about what's involved with the closing costs when you're purchasing a home?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I get this a lot because, yeah, it's all about the down payment, right? Uh, with the closing costs, there's a lot of factors that go into that. So we've got, an escrow company and their title fees and different things like that. But you also have what a lot of people don't think about is the property taxes, a year's worth of insurance. And then there's little things like recording with the county, delivery fees, wire fees. It starts to add up really, really quick, and it can be quite significant. If you use just averages, you tend to see something like 2 to 3%. That's a big, broad average, but there's a lot of different variables there.
Awesome, awesome. And so I'll touch on another point too, is, a lot of times you can negotiate for closing costs as well. Now, a lot of factors go into that. One of those factors is obviously the demand. Is it a seller's market? Is it a buyer's market? How long has the home been sitting on the market? You know, Sometimes even just asking simple questions to the listing agent as far as like, what's the motivation of the seller? How much action have they gotten on the property? Those are all things that you can take into account and try to gauge, what can we ask for in closing costs that's going to help you as the buyer and also the seller to get the house sold. So with that being said, when a consumer's saving or trying to plan for the purchase of a home and they're making a savings for this, George, what's your guide to that as far as like, or advice for someone that's looking to save for a house, taking into account the down payment and the closing costs?
Yeah. Gosh, I love that point about the seller credits. I mean, it's very popular in the market, with especially with the lower end, with first-time buyers, things like that. And you totally hit it. It's such a big thing to have a great realtor like yourself that's really getting in there and figure out what can you get out of this. How much money can we get from a seller based on where they're at right now. It's hard to know exactly what you're going to need, but you've got to aim for the down payment plus a couple few percent would be the goal. Now, if you can't exactly get all of it, of course, we can look at other solutions like having the seller pay some of those closing costs, or even I can pay some closing costs depending on the loan type and the situation. So we can combine maybe the seller plus lender credit in order to pay closing costs and get that number down a little lower. And you know what? Something just popped in my head. When it comes to someone who's putting zero down, say they're using a down payment assistance or a VA loan, something like that, often they don't think about any type of closing costs or any type of money in the bank. And you really have to. Even at a minimum, right when you get into escrow, you've got the earnest money deposit. You've got to make a deposit. And what do you recommend on the deposits right now?
Well, everybody likes to say, 1%, but that's another negotiating tactic. Part of making the contract strong is showing how much skin you got in the game. So I would always minimum 1%, but if you're willing to do more and you really love the house, then doing more than 1% is always going to be beneficial and make your offer a lot stronger.
So even a zero down person, you got to have 1% of the purchase price, maybe more in order to cover more closing costs. But there are ways to get around that using the seller or a lender credit. I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks again, George. Look, this information is always beneficial for the consumer, and I just love being able to share this with everybody. So once again, thank you for taking the time to do this with me today.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.